Hello, welcome to the next video. In this one we're going to be making another enemy, and this is Kamadoma. And let's take a look at the original game. So he's very similar to Big Eye's logic where he follows the player and he has two jumps. One is a high short distance jump and the other is a low long distance jump. And that's basically all he does, is just jump around. So we're going to pause there, we're going to skip ahead to here. And if we step, you're going to notice that the bullet from Mega Man is actually a little bit lower than his barrel. And then when we get over here to where it gets to the enemy, you're going to see it's like barely going to touch the top of his head, so it's going to kill him. Now the problem is with ours, our bullet's actually a little bit smaller than that, and it's going to go right over his head, much like it does with screwdrivers. So we're going to have to alter our bullet as well, so we mimic this part of the gameplay. And also we're going to elongate it a little bit so it's a little bit more oval, so it's more in line with the original bullet. So let's go take a look at ours. Invincible, I'm going to move over here. And so we have the guy jumping around. There's this high jump, there's a long low jump. And let's see if I can get this to go. And then he dies on one shot. So much like the game. But we'll get back to the actual bullet towards the end. So let's get started. Okay, so we have our previous project open. If you haven't been following along, you can go download the project. Check the description. There's a link to my GitHub in there, so you can go get Project 23 and start where we're at right now. Otherwise, if you have been following along, open up your project and we're going to start working on the new enemy. So first thing we're going to do is let's just take a look at his properties from the fandom site. He's worth 300. He's got 1 health. When he touches Mega Man, he deducts 2 health from him. And there's no bullet damage or anything like that because all he does is jump around. And that's the contact damage. So with this open, we're going to move that out of the way. First thing that we need to do is we're going to edit the graphic. So the graphic is inside of here in the graphics folder, and it's the one called enemies. So we're going to highlight that and go to sprite editor. Now he's over here. There's only 2 colors for him. There's blue and then there's red. So we're going to have 4 images that we're going to cut out here. So let's start with that. I get all 4 of these one by one and edit their properties. Okay, so I'm going to name Kamadoma grounded with the color. So this one's going to be grounded blue. And the pivot we're going to use is the bottom center for all of them. So this one is going to be jumping blue. So basically he only has 2 frames. He's either grounded or he's jumping. And then, oops, I want that to be bottom center. And then the red is going to be grounded red and jumping red. Okay, so let's check them out. So grounded blue, bottom center, jumping blue, bottom center, grounded red, bottom center, and jumping red, bottom center. So we're going to apply that and close out the sprite. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the game object. So we're going to right click, create a new empty. We're going to call it Kamadoma. And then we can reset the transform. And then we're going to put it on the enemy tag and the enemy layer. And then with this, we're going to go over to our scripts folder. And we can collapse, expand that, go to enemies, and we're going to drag over our enemy controller. So it brings in all of our components here. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to change this scale to 1.5. We're going to ignore the animator for right now. and we're going to skip the box collider for a moment. Now over here on the rigid body, we're going to apply a material. We're going to add on slippery, and then we're going to change collision detection to continuous. We're going to set sleeping to never sleep, and we're going to freeze the Z rotation. And now down here on the sprite, we're going to go over to the graphics, and we're going to default, let's expand that. We're going to default his graphic to grounded blue. So let's put that sprite on there. His layer is going to be 10, like the other enemies in Mega Man. And then in the enemy controller, we're going to change that information. So he's 300 for points. Max health is 1. His contact damage is 2. He doesn't cause any damage when he explodes. He has no bullets. We'll just zero that out. He's got no bullet speed, so we'll zero that out too. Bonus items is going to be random. The ball color, we're going to default to blue. And the weapon part, even though he doesn't drop one, we'll just default that to blue as well. And on the audio, for the damage clip, we're going to select number 9 for enemy damage. And then all these other ones, we don't do anything with those. And then our explode effect, if we go into prefabs and effects, we're going to drag over explode effect number 1. So that basically builds him out for the most part, the easy part. So then we're going to come back over here to the box collider. But before we do that, if we come over here, bring this over so we can see where he is. You're going to see this big green outline here is our box collider. Let me just shrink this. There you go. So we're going to reset our box collider. So that's going to bring the box around him, but his properties, one sec, it's going to be the same thing, but the size is going to be 0.12 on the X, and his Y is going to be 0.08, so it brings it in the 1 pixel around. So then we're just going to copy those components, and then what we're going to do is on him, we're going to right click and create another empty, and this is going to be the hitbox, which we've done with the other enemies. So add the hitbox, and there's no layer, we're going to default, so it's going to be on the default layer. We're going to add in a box collider 2D, and on the box collider 2D we're going to paste the values, and we're going to make it a trigger for the hitbox. So that is going to do the properties for him for the moment. So let's just save those changes, and then what we're going to do is we're going to build out his animations. So we're going to drag this over and out of the way. So go over to the animations folder. We're going to go to enemies. We're going to create a new folder here, and it's going to be called his name, Kamadoma. I'm going to go inside of there, right click, create, and then we're going to create a new Animator Controller, same name, and then we're going to create an animation, same name for the prefix, but it's going to be grounded, and then we're going to Control D that, or we're going to rename that one to be jumping. So he's got his 2 animations where he's grounded and he's jumping. So we're going to double click excuse me, on the controller, go back over to the project tab, highlight grounded, because we're going to make that the default. So right click from selected, so there's the grounded, and we're going to go back over to project, highlight jumping, back to the animator tab, right click from that, selected, and now we have both his animations in there, but we don't have any actual animations yet. So because he has the 2 different colors, we're going to be using override. So we're going to right click, create, and then we're going to make a animator controller override, or override controller. So the overrides are going to be based off the colors. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to make the blue one, and then we're going to duplicate this grounded animation, but we're going to call it grounded blue, and then we can duplicate the jumping. You highlight and do Control D, and then we're going to say jumping blue. So now on these, this grounded, we're going to change the sample speed to 1. Oops, is that the right one? Oops. Alright. Not that it matters. These are kind of like placeholders anyway, but the grounded blue, speed of 1, jumping blue, speed of 1. And so then what we're going to do is on this blue here, we're going to, for the override controller, we're going to drag on the original animator there so that it exposes that all the animations are tied to it. And then we're going to drag over grounded blue and jumping blue. So then on Kamadoma, we're going to drag over the override onto his animator just so we can start editing the properties on it. And right now it's on grounded. Now grounded, we're going to drag over the grounded blue. And we're just going to bring this down so we can see it. So let's make a save right there too. So there's his grid jump, or his grounded, and the ground is going to have the same box collider property, so we're not actually going to edit anything on here. So what we're going to do then is we're going to do jumping blue, and then we're going to add on that. So now we have that, but now we're going to edit the box collider properties. And if we bring this over, just so we can see what's going on, we'll just shrink this down a little bit. If we preview it, basically we're just going to bring the top part of the box up here to where his head is. So it's going to basically just be a longer version of this. So we're going to go to record, and I've already got the numbers for these, so we're not going to drag anything around. And so on the box collider Y offset, it's going to be 0.095, and on the Y size, it's going to be 0.17. Now if we're going to go to the hitbox, it's going to be the same. So over here on this, it's going to be 0.095 for the offset Y, and on the size Y, it's going to be 0.17. So you can see now it's basically covers the whole sprite here except for the outer edge. So then we can stop recording there. So that's all we're going to do with that. So let's get this out of the way. Save our changes. Go back over to the animations folder and enemies, Kamadoma. And now what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the blue override. So you can highlight Control D. We're going to make it red. This one's going to be red. And then we're going to duplicate the grounded blue, and we're going to call it grounded red, and then we're going to duplicate the jumping blue and make that one jumping red. Okay, so now we're going to basically go over to his game object and drag over the red. Well, actually, before we do that, we're going to highlight the red here, and we're going to assign the red animation for the grounded and the jumping. Okay, now we're going to go and put it over on him. So we'll go put the override red on the controller there. So now we can edit it. We hover over this, and you can see it says red there, red anim. So we're going to change the sprites on this. So we're going to go over to the graphics, and then the grounded red, we're going to drag that and replace the blue. And then we're going to hit the drop down, change it to jumping red, and then we're going to change the red jump and drag that in there. Now all the dimensions are the same because it's the same thing just with different colors. So we're going to save that, and now over back in the animations, we're going to drag over the original controller and put that on our game object and save. So now that we have that all built out, what we need then is the script that's going to basically control his logic and his jumping and everything. So we're going to go over to our scripts folder here, and then enemies. We're going to create a new script, new C# script, and it's going to be called Kamadoma Controller. And now over on our game object, it's done thinking, we're going to highlight our game object here, scroll to the very bottom, and we're going to drag that on there so that it's on, so that we can make the changes after, before we make it a prefab. So we're going to open this up, Visual Studio. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the code. So I'm going to come back over here real quick. I'm going to pull up the files. And 1 second. Okay, so we have this open in Meld, and we're going to basically send over all the changes. So then we're going to go and check it out in Visual Studio and go through all the code. So we're going to drop that over, send that over, and get rid of that. And then we can save this. We'll probably come back to this in a bit. So let's go over to Visual Studio. Now it populates. So let's go over the code. So it's much like any other enemy that we've already created. And if you haven't watched any of the previous videos on creating enemies, you might want to go take a look at some of those, because a lot of this is basically same information that I have in those. So you can take a look at Big Eye or Blaster or Screwdriver or any of those guys. A lot of it's the same properties. So the enemy controller script, which I will not go over because we haven't made any changes to that. Basically, these are imported from that script over into our game object. So we're just going to get handles to those from these variables here. Then we have a bool here that says I'm just grounded. We're going to check and see if he's grounded or not. When he's not grounded, he's going to show his jump animation. When he is grounded, it's going to show his grounded animation. And now between each jump, there's a little bit of a delay. So that's what this jump timer and delay is for. So we're just going to do a half a second. Actually, it's probably a little bit less than half a second. Maybe it's a quarter second, 0.35. I'm not really sure exactly. But I'm just going to do half a second for mine, and you can obviously change this if you'd like. We're going to do a variable here, vector2, jump vector. So this is what's going to basically pick from these this array here. We're going to randomly choose his jump velocity. And I have the two velocities here. And you can obviously toy with these values if you'd like, and make them however you want. I'm basically giving you a working model, and you're able to make whatever changes you want to it. If you want to split things up into coroutines or whatever, by all means go for it. So like when we get down to the update part. So these are the two jump velocities. And then we have this flag that basically was introduced, I believe, in Bomb Man when we were building our enemy boss. Enable AI. So this is basically a flag to say, okay, start executing the artificial intelligence, so that he starts doing stuff. So this guy basically jumps around when he sees Mega Man. Now there might be times we don't want him to start jumping around right away. It's like as soon as the scene starts, he's going to start jumping. What if he's way at the end of the scene somewhere and we don't want him to start jumping? We want to be able to control when we want him to start moving around. So that's what this is going to do. And we have a enum here, the two colors, blue and red. And then a serialized field here where we're going to basically be able to choose from our script and the inspector what color we want our object to start as. And then these are the animator controllers that are basically going to control which color we're going to be using, or which animation. If it's going to be the blue or the red one. Start here, we get we fill in our handles here for our controller class, our animator component, box collider, and Ridge's body, if we use them. And then we have a function here called set color, and this is basically going to set what color that we want it to start as. And that's going to basically do with the animator controller. Fixed update is where we're going to basically handle the jumping and see if we're touching the ground, etc. Now this is basically a copy over from the player, from Big Eye, and anybody else that basically has jumping or touching the ground logic. So basically exactly the same thing. And if this is the first time, I'll bring these down so you can see, in case you have to actually type it out and you haven't done this before. Get this one, bring that down. Just save that. Okay. So real quick, grounded, we're going to default to false, raycast color. Basically this has to do with the debug lines. And what we're going to do here is we're going to get where our ground layer, we're going to see, this is how we're going to do the test, and this is the layer that we're going to see if we're grounded or not. We get the bottom quarter portion of the box collider. This is how I basically check and see if grounding is working or not. Some people use like individual raycast lines. I use the bottom of my box collider. So this is the way I figured out a long time ago, and I've been using this. It's more solid than the single lines. I've noticed there's like a little bit of a hiccup sometimes if it's like on a corner or something. It detects whether you are touching the ground or not. This is basically the entire bottom of the box is a yes or a no. And so if it collides with the ground, we set this variable to is grounded to true, so that way we know, okay, then we can switch animations later if we want. And then this basically just draws debug lines. It's going to be green if he's touching the ground, or if he's not touching the ground, it'll basically be red. So, and then these basically draw the lines of the box when he's on the bottom of the box, so you can see what's going on with the when you're inspecting it and stuff like that in the player. And here's our update function. So this is freeze enemy. So this is when before the scene starts, everything's kind of like frozen on the screen, and we just basically kick ourselves out of the update loop if he's got the freeze enemy enabled. And so here what we're going to do is we're going to look for our player and save our player in this game object here so that we can see where our player is in the scene. And then this is the enable AI variable, so we're going to see if it's enabled. Then we're going to basically do all the logic here, otherwise it's basically does nothing. He just sits, he does nothing, he just sits on the ground. So we check and see if he's grounded. If he is grounded, what we're going to do is we're going to play the grounded animation. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that his X velocity is 0, and if he happens to have a Y velocity, like he's coming down from the jump or whatever, let it play out until it zeroes itself out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to deduct our jump timer. So it's going to keep negating from time delta time, and once it hits basically 0, it should really be less than or equal to 0, but whatever, I mean, it's not that much of a difference. So once it's below 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to randomly choose between 0 and 1 and pick one of our jump vectors. So we're going to pick one of those values, one of those jump vectors out of the array, and we're going to store it in this jump vector variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to see, is the player to the left side of Kamadoma? If he is to the left, that means he's on the left side, so we want to make sure that Kamadoma jumps to the left, which basically means it's a negative X jump. If he's not, then he must be to the right, so we want him to jump positive, and this wouldn't get executed. And then down here, what we're going to do is we're going to apply the jump vector to the velocity, so boom, he jumps. And then we're going to reset the jump timer so that when he does land, it's basically does a little countdown again and picks another jump and jumps again. If he's in the air, we're going to play the jumping animation, and we're going to basically keep going in that X direction, either left or right, and we're going to play out the Y velocity as he goes up and goes down. It'll keep going up and going down, etc. So that's basically the logic to this guy in the update function. Really isn't much to it. It's very much like Big Eye, except we don't do patterns or anything like that. But like I said, if you want to break this down into coroutines, you want to simplify this, by all means go for it. I'm giving you a working model. You can make it way better than I did just to get it out there, you know what I mean? So down here we have a public void called enable AI with a flag that's a bool. So we either turn it on or we turn it off. And we can do it through this public function, or we can do it through the serialized through the inspector. And then down here we have another public function called set color, so we can change this color on the fly if we wanted. And what we're going to do there is we pass the color, it gets stored in here, and then we're going to call our set animator controller, which is right here. Inside the set animator controller, all we're going to do is see what color we are, and we're going to change the animator controller to whatever color that we want it to be. So that is basically Kamadoma in a nutshell. Very, very simple enemy. So then we're going to do is we're going to go back over here. We're going to go back over to our game object, and we're going to fill in the rest of this. So by default, it's your call. I don't think I enabled it in the project by default. So we're just going to leave it unchecked, but if you want, you can always have your prefab as when we finish this to always enable AI. It's your call, so you can make this checked if you want. But right now I'm going to leave it unchecked. We're going to default the blue, and we're going to put in our controller overrides. So go back up to your animations folder, the Kamadoma folder. So we want to put in the blue, and we want to put in the red. Alright. So with that done, we're going to save, and now we can make him a prefab. So let's go over here to our prefabs enemies folder here and drag him inside of there. So now he's with all of our other enemies. Cool. So we're gonna add 2 of these guys to the scene, but I'm gonna rename them. The reason why I'm gonna rename them we're gonna get to, but basically we need to know which one we want to activate, and we're gonna be doing that in the little part in a minute or two. So we're gonna move that guy up to here, shrink that up. Then we're gonna duplicate him, and we're gonna rename this one to 2. And then we're going to put that under him. So the first one we're going to leave as 1. He's going to be the first one that we come across in the scene, so by default we're going to want to enable his AI, so when the scene starts he just starts acting right away because he's already going to be in camera view where the player is. The second guy, however, we're not going to enable his AI, and we're going to make him red. Alright, so we're going to save that. And then we're going to change their positions. So this first guy here, let's see, where's the numbers on that? Right. So our first guy is going to be on negative 11.54 on the X, and the Y is actually going to be 4.407999. Now you're like, why is it using such a weird number? Well, actually, when he lands on the ground, that just happens to be what the Y position is when he's grounded, so that's why we're going to put that number right there. So let's bring this back over so you can see what's going on. Stretch this out, bring this over here, and so there he is there. That's our second one. So here's our first guy. Now we're going to go and put in our second one here over by this other screwdriver. So let's go to the second guy here. Change his X position. His X position is going to be negative 7.029, and his Y is going to be 2.412. So there you can see him right there. Okay, so let me just make this a little bit bigger. Just get both of these parts in there so you can see. Let me shrink that down. Okay, so let us save that. Now let's just run it and see what happens. So I'm going to put myself on invincible, and there we go. So you can see he's jumping around, there's his logic, he randomly chooses between the 2 jumps, and all he does is, he should follow me around, follow me around, follow me around. I'm going to go this way. Okay, so I'm going to turn off his logic here in a sec. So let me do this. Yeah, that was bad. That was bad. Shouldn't have did that. Okay, let's just start from the beginning with its logic disabled. Okay, so I'm going to shoot now. I'm going to pause it when I shoot. Okay, so here's my bullet, right? Let's just boom, 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 get it over there. And what it's going to do is, you see that? Boom, flew right over his head. Well, it's because my bullet's a little bit too small. And it's not oval either to fall in line with the perfect Mega Man. So what we're going to do is we're just going to modify that bullet on the prefab level. So let's just get this out of the way. Well, actually we need this real quick, just so we can see what's going on. So let me shrink it up again, bring it over here. Go into the weapons prefab, double click on your bullet. So here's our bullet. So right now it's a perfect circle. And so what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, you can make it however you want, but I'm going to change the X scale to 1.5 and the Y to 1.2. So it's a little oval and it's a little bit where it's bigger, so it should basically hit him right on top of the head and knock him out, right? But we're not going to change it there. If you remember from way back in the day when we were building this out, I modified the bullet script so that we can have more than just the one bullet in there. So we know that element 0, the very first index in our array of bullets here, is actually the default Mega Man bullet. So we're just going to change it down here in this scale. And so we're going to say 1.5, and then we're going to change that to 1.2. And obviously we're going to leave the radius alone because it actually extends a little bit below the black, which is perfect. So let's just save that, get out of there. Now, if we do this one more time, there. So we want this guy, he should still be disabled. Yeah, enable AI is nope. So let's run it. So let's run it again. Okay, so now I'm going to shoot. Okay, see, ooh, look. Nice oval bullet. A little bit bigger. We're going to step this. Bring it over here towards him. I'm going to zoom in here real quick. So it looks like it's going to hit him. Oh, and it did hit him. Too bad I went too far, but perfect size. And I shouldn't say perfect, but that just took him out. He exploded. There's my bonus ball. So I'm going to go real quick, take that out. I'm going to come down here. Now my red guy, he's not active. So I'm going to stop this. Let's turn them both on. Let's see what's going to happen. And we'll do it that way. Alright, let's put this dude's AI on. And let's put the second dude's AI on. So this is what the problem is. Because this red one's down further in the scene, right? He shouldn't even know about Mega Man coming or anything like that. Well, that's what the whole enable AI is. And we're going to basically do a little bit of a it's not a trick, but it's kind of like when you get somewhere, something new is going to happen type deal. So I'm going to start here. Kill that dude. And we're going to kill this dude. Oh, you see him? He's already jumping around. See him down there? And he gets his high jump. You should see there he is. I don't want him to do that yet. I don't want him to start jumping around until I get down to this other highway part. So how are we going to solve that? What we're going to do is we're going to add to our main scene script where we basically search for our Kamadoma 2, which is that's why we named him 2. We're going to find that guy, and then we're going to enable his AI. But what we're going to do also is we're going to modify the camera script and throw in another event for only moving camera stuff. That didn't really make sense. We have a flag inside the camera where we say only move camera. So when he's dropping between these, there's no transition, no pause, no sliding, nothing like that. The camera just moves to the next portion that we want to be visible in the game world. So what we're going to do is those two events that we have, like the pre-transition, the post-transition, I didn't want to end up using either one of those because it's like, oh, which one is it? And I'll have to go back and look. So we're just going to add another event. Strictly it has to do with only move camera when that option is enabled. So we're going to save this. I'm going to go and bring up those two files real quick, and then we're going to send the code over to them, and then we're going to go take a look. So 1 second, please. Okay. So I have these two files open now. One is our actual camera transition script, and the other one's our scene. So in the camera transition script, I'm going to send this over. So we're adding a new public Unity event. That's going to be called Only Move Camera Event. Such a great name, right? And then what we're going to do down here is we're going to add an invoke for it. And this is only going to be inside of our Only Move Camera when this variable is active. So let's save that. And then inside of our main scene, we only have this one new public function, and it's called Highway 0 reached. And it's called Highway 0 because that's the very first trigger point, and we'll go take a look at that in a minute. So we're going to send that over, and we're going to save that. So now, let's just let this thing finish thinking about it. Okay, so back over in Visual Studio, we're going to go over to the camera first, which is here. Okay, camera transition. So this is the variable here, only move camera. If this is checked, it's basically just going to move the coordinates without any of the transition stuff. So down here we added this. So we have a new event here called only move camera event. So we added that, it's public, so we can, grab it and do what we need with it whenever we want. So then the next part is actually down here on the trigger. So when we enter this, if the player hits that trigger, and if we have only move camera enabled, that checkbox enabled, obviously we change the bounds. But what we're also going to do is we're going to call that event. So only move camera event, we're going to invoke that. Then we return. So that's all that this does. So all we did was add a new event and then invoke the event. So that's for the camera transition. Now we're going to make use of that. So over here in the main scene, which is our whole highway scene, boss fight type deal that we had set up, we're going to go down here, and this is what we added. So public void, highway 0 reached. And so what we do here is we look for our nice game object named Kamadoma 2, and we get a handle to that, and if we happen to get that handle and it's not null, then what we're going to do is enable the AI. And if, for instance, we check this, if you use your the magnet beam and work your way back up to the previous highway and then call the trigger again, well, guess what? It's not going to find it because you probably killed him. But if you didn't kill him, then this wouldn't be null. But if you did kill him, it is null, so it shouldn't do this again. So you're not going to get any reference errors or anything like that. So now that we have this, we're going to go back over to the actual inspector here, and to make use of it, let me just get this out of the way. We're going to go over to our transition, Highway 0. Actually, you should see this. What I'm talking about. So Highway 0, this is the first trigger transition, which is basically enabled for only move camera only. So this is Highway 0 transition. Now I can get out of the way. So you can see here, this is the checkbox, only move camera. So the rest of the stuff is pretty much all ignored except for the positions of the min and max positions of the new camera area that we want to set. So what we're going to do down here, and here's our new event that we can add to this event section. So we're going to hit the plus on that. Now our script is tied to this game object here called main scene. So if we actually drag the main scene script, that is, if we drag that over here, and if we hit this drop down, we're going to go to the main scene here, and now we have this option here that says Highway 0 reached. So we're going to select that. Let's save that. Okay, so Kamadoma 2, we're going to deactivate him so he doesn't start up right away. We don't want him to start up. That's what the whole trigger is going to do with that public function. So now we're going to play it again. So this guy's going to start out right away. So we're going to kill him, kill this. And as soon as we get past this trigger here, the other dude should activate. We shouldn't see him hopping around until we get past the trigger. Alright, let's check it out. So, pow, 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 die, pow, 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 die too. I'm just going to stand here. I don't see him jumping around yet. And if you actually look over here, he's still just sitting there. So now we're going to go past. Oh, look, he woke up. His AI got enabled. Ooh. And we're going to take that, and then there's our magnet beam. Then we can work our way back up if we wanted. There, we made it back up. So we went past the trigger, and if we go through it again, he's null, he's dead, so it shouldn't cause any errors. If you took out the null, more than likely it can't find Kamadoma 2 again, and that game object is going to be null, and it's going to cause errors because it couldn't, do the thing with the script and enabling the AI again. So, all right, so that is that, and I believe that brings us to the end. This is kind of a short video because I wanted to get through it. It's been a while since I put out another video, but I need to get back in, back in my groove so that I can finally get back over to the weapons menu I basically started and I never finished because I hurt my back, and I've been trying to get back over that. So I'm all better now. Alright, so anyway, that brings us to the end. So we have a new enemy. I'm not sure what the next enemy might be. It might be Metal, that guy with a hard hat, and he starts, when you get close to him, and he lifts up his helmet, you see his little face, and he starts spraying, a cluster of 3 bullets. So I might do him next, just to get things moving a little bit. I'm not exactly sure how many more videos I'm going to do. I might cut it at 30. So this is being 24, so that'd be 6 more. I don't know yet. There's a lot of big projects like the weapons menu and the kind of like the level select screen. Those are kind of like really involved type videos, so they might take longer to do. So I wanted to kind of throw a little bit of these out there, just little smaller ones. And then I still have the dash that somebody requested. They wanted the dash so he slides. I'm still going to do that. I made a promise, so I'm going to work on that at some point and get that video out. But I don't know how much more Mega Man there's going to be. So, but for right now, I'm still going with it. Anyway, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, feel free to subscribe. I have a new Discord server, so if you want, go join that. The link's in the description. Join there if you have any questions, if you need some help, or if you have any, want to throw any feedback my way, feel free. There's not really much going on there right now because I've been kind of busy with work, but I'm in there, so if you do leave a message, I will get back to you. It just might not be the same day. Anyway, have a good day. I'll catch you in the next video.